Hi all. My inductive sermon is about mountaintop spirituality. The text of the sermon is Luke 9, verses 28 through 36, which is the transfiguration story of Jesus on the mountaintop. The focus for this sermon is that it's easy to get caught up in a spiritual high that comes along with the big events in our lives where we feel like we're really in touch with Jesus, but lose sight of why and where we were asked to go with Jesus in the first place. The function is to remind our hearers that our transformation and our formation and our mission is not for our own spiritual fervor, but to fuel the gospel mission. In my introduction, I will be talking about summer camps and some other mountaintop experiences that we all are used to. And I'll lead into my understanding that I totally get why Peter wanted to just hang out on the mountain with Jesus and Moses and Elijah. He just wanted to stay there with the holy guys and keep that high for as long as possible. But the thunder and the voice that happen in this story imply that something huge happened here. We don't ever get the point of what happens here, and so we don't understand why it's such a big deal. One, that Peter wanted to hang out on the mountain, and two, what he was supposed to learn from this. So the next step is to look at what happened before and after this story, and why the gospel writers put this story in this particular place. All three of the synoptics put the story in essentially the exact same group of stories that roughly follow this same process or grouping that Luke uses. First, Jesus gives the 12 their assignments. Then there's a miracle story of the feeding of the 5,000 plus people. Then there's the point where Jesus asks the disciples, "Who do the people say I am, and who do you say I am?" And then Jesus foretells his own death and resurrection. And right after that, the transfiguration story happens. When they come down from the mountain, Jesus heals the boy possessed by a demon, and then Jesus foretells his death again. The tension here is that Peter and James and John were radically impacted by what they saw on the mountain, but they still managed to miss the point and forget exactly why they were supposed to be, what and why they were supposed to be there. They were called to a specific mission. They were given ringside seats to the kingdom and everything that was happening. And they were given exposure to the supernatural. In hindsight, this should have fueled their mission. It should have fueled them to move forward in their assignment. But we look at Luke 9, 46 through 48 then, where they have an argument about who's the greatest in the kingdom. So what happened to the spiritual understanding they received on the mountain? Did they become petty because they were back in real life? Why did they seem to forget their assignment? Why wasn't seeing Moses and Elijah and hearing God's voice enough to keep them going? The application of this story is what happens to your calling when the high wears off. What was the purpose of the mountaintop experience? Why do we go to the mountain if we just have to come back down? The points I want to make here are to remember the people who went to the mountain with you. Remember with the people who went to the mountain with you. They're not your competition, they're your community. 2, to cling to the voice you heard and to what you were called to do. Focus on your assignment. And then the third thing is focus on your mission and remember it's not about you. Don't make it so spiritual that you forget the practical mission. Things like feeding the people and healing the sick. The conclusion here is that the miracles we witness and the highs we experience are glimpses into the kingdom. They fuel us. They're the fuel that transforms us, and it sustains us for the mission. They are never meant to be an end to themselves. I have more detail on this because I plan to preach this in just a couple of weeks to a specific group of people who they're being trained for what is essentially a mountaintop experience. And I want to make sure that they're prepared for the reason they're going to this mountaintop experience. It's not about the experience itself. It's about what they're being prepared to do afterward. And I want them to be focused on the fact that their transformation and their calling and every spiritual experience they have here is not just about a spiritual high. It's about being transformed and fueled for the mission that they'll experience afterwards. Thanks.